A visit to St Kenelm's church in Halesowen in the Clent Hills, Worcestershire. A beautiful little church with an interesting legend attached, that of Kenelm, son of a Mercian king named Kenwulf, who died in 819 AD when Kenelm was only 7 years old. Gwendraida, Kenelm's sister, was jealous of her younger brother and thought that if he was dead, she could rule in his stead as queen. She had him slain by her lover, Asgerbert, Kenelm's tutor, who took him hunting in the Clent Hills. Kenelm dreamed the night before the expedition that he saw a place with a white cow in a pasture. Also, he saw a white dove in a tree, which he climbed to survey the four corners of the kingdom. His nurse, hearing the dream, knew immediately that the boy was to die. The next day, Kenelm was taken into the hills and beheaded. A spring was said to rise out of the spot where his blood soaked the soil, and a dove was said to have flown to Rome, where it dropped a message to the Pope. It read, "In Clent by Cowbatch, beneath a thorn, lieth Kenelm, king born, his head off-shorn." Envoys were sent to England from Rome, and these were guided to the spot by a mysterious white cow and an old crone. Here the body was discovered, and the site grew into a large village, Kenelmstow, which is now lost. The church itself dates from around 1150 and is built close to, or perhaps on the site where Kenelm's martyrdom is supposed to have taken place. It has several elaborate features, especially the elaborately sculpted tympanum, reflecting perhaps the church's importance as a shrine of Kenelm. There is a blocked doorway in the south wall that once gave access to steps leading to a healing spring, said to have been where Kenelm was killed, but now rather sadly is blocked off by a boiler house. To the east in the grounds lies a more modern well where the waters trickle and steps lead down to it. Two walls border the channel, and on them have been carved scenes from the Legend of St Kenelm. These are the work of artist Michael Fairfax. Nearby is the site of the Victorian well, and by it a clootie tree, where ribbons and cloth hang in adornment. The origins of this practice are from times when visitors seeking healing to a well would tear off a piece of their clothing, washing the affected physical ailment with the cloth soaked in the well's water. This would then be hung in a tree near the well and left to decay, the ailment meant to disappear as the rag decays. Many people now simply tie a rag or ribbon in the tree, not understanding the origins or meaning of this practice, but wanting to perhaps make a wish or a prayer in this special place. But what historical fact, if any, is there to this legend with its associated holy spring? Well, not much. Whilst there does appear to have been a Kenelm, and his name appears on charters, what does exist points to Kenelm being 25 years old when he died and not 7. From historical records we know that Kenelm's sister Gwendraida had entered the cloister at the time of her father's death and was the abbess of a convent in Kent or Essex. Kenelm was big business. Kenelmstow had become a major centre for pilgrimage, and it has even been suggested that Halesowen Abbey was built close by so that the monks might benefit from the revenue of wealthy pilgrims. Within the legend does, however, lie some interesting esoteric symbolism. Kenelm being beheaded aged 7, the number 7 is associated with perfection and divine kingship, a mystical number of great significance. 7 planets to the ancients, 7 chakras, 7 days, 7 seals mentioned in the Bible, and important to the Saxons. In the context of rebirth or spiritual renewal, the number 7 often represents completion, wholeness, and a connection to the divine or spiritual realm. Beheading in folklore and esoteric traditions, having the head chopped off often symbolises profound transformation, sacrifice, or the severance of ego to achieve spiritual enlightenment. Decapitation in myths often precedes renewal or a shift to a higher state of being. For example, in some alchemical or initiatory contexts, it symbolises the death of the old self, paving the way for spiritual rebirth or awakening. The motif of a spring rising from where someone's blood soaked the soil is a recurring theme in folklore and mythology. often associated with the idea of life emerging from death or sacrifice. This concept is present in stories like that of St Oswald, where a spring is said to have burst forth in the spot where St Oswald's arm fell during the retrieval of his remains, or that of St Withburga, youngest daughter of Anna, King of East Angles, who died in AD 654 and was buried in the churchyard of St Nicholas in Dereham, Norfolk. A holy spring was said to have sprang from her grave when her bones were removed by the abbot and monks of Ely. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, the story of Niobe's children being killed by Apollo and Artemis is told. The earth is said to have been warmed by their blood, and from it human beings were formed, demonstrating the idea of new life emerging from the sacrifice. This idea of a spring or well emerging from a place where blood soaked the earth is a very ancient and recurring motif in folklore, mythology and religious traditions. It is a symbolic representation of life continuing or being reborn from death or sacrifice. If we look at the name Kenelm, we see that his name can be split into two. Ken, spelt K-E-N or C-E-N, is a rune of illumination and enlightenment brought by knowledge and wisdom. It signifies a piece of wood cut from a tree and used as a torch, thus associated with fire. The Old English rune poem states, "Ken is known to every living man by its pale bright flame, it always burns where princes sit within." The second part of his name, Elm, in Celtic mythology, elm trees were associated with the underworld and associated with water. They hold a similar place in the folklore of ancient Greece, said to be the trees that sprouted to life when Orpheus played his harp for his wife Eurydice while rescuing her from the underworld. Elm was also commonly used for creating coffins. Elm trees are often associated with regeneration and resilience due to their ability to sprout back after being felled or damaged. In Celtic lore, thorn bushes, particularly blackthorn and hawthorn, are imbued with rich symbolism, often representing protection, transformation, and the darker aspects of nature's cycles, sacrifice, protection, and liminality. There are many elements that are esoteric to this legend. The area is supposed to be the point of origins for the River Stour. It is believed that the original well was just across from the church now lying in a field nearby. Excavations at the turn of the century unearthed Roman and other various artefacts, including broken crosses. The whereabouts of these artefacts are now unknown, but they are most likely to have been votive offerings to a forgotten deity. River sources were often chosen by the Celts as ritual sites, and offerings were deposited in the water or buried nearby. They believed that the water was a gateway to the other world of spirits and deities. Shrines were often set up at the source of a river. So it seems this has been an important sacred place in the landscape prior to Christianity, and that a real historical figure has been woven into a legend packed full of esoteric symbology and mysticism, usefully and skillfully crafted to bring in revenue to the church whilst also guarding a sacred truth.